If you're not under the law, how are you going to live the Christian life? What's going to keep you from sin? So, looking at Galatians chapter 2, verse 20 and 21. Paul has been challenging Peter publicly, and we got to the point where he was saying that he was dead to the law and alive to God. And now he explains a little bit more about how that works out. How you live the Christian life apart from being under the law. And he says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And the life I live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not set aside the grace of God, for if righteousness could be gained through the law, Christ died for nothing. So here we have our text. Paul starts off with, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live. So he's talking personally. And this is the same for every Christian. He says, I've been crucified with Christ and I no longer live. He's saying the same thing twice, that he is dead, that he has died. I've been crucified with Christ. As Christ gave up his life, so Paul gave up his life also. He died with Christ. In Romans 6 it says, the death he died to sin once for all. It's talking about Jesus. The death he died to sin once for all. But the life he lives to God. In the same way, count yourselves dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. And Paul is saying here, I was crucified with Christ. My life was given over to God. At that point, I died. And we are to consider ourselves dead to sin and alive to God, as is Jesus dead to sin and alive to God, according to Romans 6. So I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live. Right? So I no longer live. The ego, the me, the what I want is over. My life no longer belongs to me. It belongs to him. It's not about me. The things that happened to Paul weren't about Paul, they were about Jesus. When they persecuted Paul, it wasn't Paul so much they were having a go at, it was Jesus. When they persecute us, when they have a go at us, it's not us they're having a go at, it's Jesus. Because he's who we're standing for. He is who it's all about. It's not about us, it's about him. I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live. Okay. So is Paul absolutely dead? But yet he's alive. He's writing this letter. Okay, how does that work? But Christ lives in me. Ooh. Right. So Christ lives in the dead body. He gives new life to the dead one. And he gives us a new life. This is good news. He puts his Spirit in us, and that's when we're born again, born of the Spirit. And a new life and power to live a new life by God living in us. It's not about our effort. It's about God doing his thing in us. I've been crucified with Christ and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Change of ownership. I no longer belong to me. I belong to him. He is Lord of my life, even though sometimes it may not look that way. But he is. And he's changing me. The life I live in the flesh, okay, I live in this body, and the life I live this way, I live in a particular way. Do I live by trying to keep the law? Is that what Paul's saying? No. The life I live in the flesh, I live by faith. By faith. Romans 1:17, again, in the context of the gospel. For in it, in the gospel, a righteousness from God is revealed, from faith to faith. As it is written, the righteous will live by faith. So here he says it. I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the flesh, I live by faith. I live it by faith, not by law, not by my effort, but by faith. In our world, lots of people have faith. Just have faith, man. It'll be cool. Everything will be fine. Just believe. But that's not what Paul's talking about. His faith has an object. It is specifically directed in one direction. It is directed at Jesus. His faith is in Jesus. By faith in the Son of God. Jesus, who is the Son of God. I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God. The Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. The God in the flesh. The Creator in the flesh. That is where he put his faith. That is where we must put our faith. In him. In who he is. And in what he did. Because then Paul goes on. Who loved me. Who loved me. This is not impersonal. This is deeply personal. This is deeply meaningful. This gets us at the very core of who we are. The most meaningful thing for a human being is to be loved and to love. There's nothing more valuable than that. Who loved me. The Son of God. Who loved me. The Son of God. Who loved me. And more. Gave himself for me. He did it all. It's not what I can do. It's not how good I am. It's not how good I try to live. It's who Jesus is and what he has done. It is both. It is that he loves me, and he loves me so much that he did this. He gave himself for me. He gave everything for me. And I've turned to him, Paul is saying, and I'm crucified with him. And he's living in me. And I'm living by faith in him. Not by keeping the law. Not by eating with the Jews and no longer with the Gentiles, as Peter was doing. But it could be any aspect of the law, where the law becomes the standard of how you live. No, Paul is saying, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. That's how I live the Christian life. That is the calling. And who gets glory then? Is it me? Because, well, I don't do that. See that person over there? Oh, I don't do that horrible thing. Oh, no, not me. I'm good. No. That goes to you. The glory goes to you then. You just become a Pharisee. No, the glory goes to God because I have nothing to offer. I'm accepted today on one basis. And one basis only, and that is what Jesus did for me. That's the only reason I'm accepted by God. There's nothing else. I have nothing to offer. And I'm dead. I'm crucified with Christ, and I have a new life. And it's Jesus in me. And I live by faith in the one who loved me and gave himself for me. It's everything. And then Paul goes on. And he says, I do not set aside the grace of God. And this is what Peter was doing. He was setting aside the grace of God in order to try and keep the law. You see, it's one or the other, but it's not both. You are either walking in the grace of God, in the mercy of God, that he gives us his righteousness and wipes out our sin by faith, or it's by our effort and by our performance and by trying to keep the law, be that the 10 Commandments or the 613 Commandments or whatever church law you've got, or whatever law you've got in your own head. We're accepted simply because of what Jesus did. He said, I do not set aside the grace of God. And then he gives us a reason, and it's very compelling. For if righteousness could be gained through the law, Christ died for nothing. Look, if you can be acceptable to God, if you can live a righteous life by keeping the law, then Jesus didn't need to die. Jesus died for you and for me and for Paul because there's no other way for us to come to God. There's no other way for us to have a real life. There's no other way for us to know God other than through Jesus' sacrifice for us. the real expression of love, the real expression of how much God values us, that he would do this. If you can get to God by keeping the law, if you can live a righteous life, if you can live the Christian life by keeping the law, Jesus didn't need to die. That was just a waste. He didn't do it just to put the icing on the cake. He did it because it is the cake. Without his death on our behalf and his resurrection, we have nothing. Absolutely nothing. And we would all go to hell for all eternity because it's what we all deserve. It's what I deserve. It's what Paul deserved. It's what you deserve. Because we're all pretty much the same. But I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And the life I live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me and for you. He loves you, and he gave himself for you, so that by faith you can live a new life. By faith you can please God. Hebrews 11:6. And without faith it's impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. He doesn't reward those who earnestly seek their own ability to impress God. No. Jesus has done it all, and he gives us a new life, and he gives us a new way to live, and it is by faith in him, because of his love and what he has done, and because of who he is. So this is Paul's argument to Peter, and to the rest of them, and to all of us, and to the Galatians, that we're not under law. It's not about how good we are compared to the law. It's about who we're trusting. It's about who we believe. It's about who we're walking with by faith. And it's one or the other. You either go with the law or you go with Jesus, but you don't go with both. It is not, yes, I believe Jesus and now I'm going to try and keep the 10 Commandments. Actually, there are 613 commandments. You can't just isolate the 10. People do. They say it's the moral law. Look, all of God's law is moral law. The 613 laws of God are moral laws. When God says something, it's moral. It's where we get our standard of right and wrong. But to isolate the 10 is, in the 10 Commandments, is not biblical. And Paul gets to that later in chapter 3. Which is the next chapter, and we will hopefully, Lord willing, get onto that soon. And so we've had this discussion with Peter, this public rebuke of Peter because Peter had got it wrong, and Paul's correcting this, but not just for Peter, for all of us. And Peter agreed with him, because later Peter says that Paul's writings are scripture. So in the next chapter, in chapter 3, Paul starts to address the Galatians and the problem the Galatians are having personally. And he asks them some pointed questions. So what are those questions? And how do they apply to us? Because we can ask ourselves these questions as well. And that's a question for the next video on Galatians. So stick with me. I hope you are encouraged and blessed. If you are, if this is encouraging you, do share it with others. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. It does help to get this out to as many people as we can. Because this is good news. Good news about Jesus. Wonderful news that we're free in him. What a wonderful God we have. So thanks very much for listening. The Lord bless you very much. Bye.